up, everyone, and welcome back to the Miss Teen Crypto Show. I'm your host, Randi Hipper, here again on this lovely Wednesday with an amazing guest. But before I get started, make sure you guys smash the like, subscribe, share the stream out with friends, because people need to know today's guest and what he has created and what the future holds for it. So again, make sure you share the stream out. Thank you, everyone in the chat, for being here. This show is sponsored by Bybit Exchange. Make sure you check out Bybit and click that link in the live chat in the description to check them out. Thank you again for coming. Let's get our goal of 100 live viewers and 100 likes for today's show. I'm sure we could do it. Thank you guys so much for coming. Let's get into today's guest, Jared Tate, founder of DigiByte Blockchain. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
I'm very excited to talk to you today, Jared. I know I told you you look like a city guy. You look like you're always very busy. Although you're not in the city, you're a really busy guy out there with the DigiByte blockchain, creating so many things and being really involved in this space. So I commend you for that. And being a founder is not easy, especially in the crypto space where you feel like you constantly have to prove yourself. But how are you dealing with, the past few weeks? I know before the show we were mentioning like the FOMC meeting. How do you feel about everything going on right now?
I've been working in this space for almost a decade now. DigiByte just turned 9 years old on January 10th, which, it's pretty amazing. I first discovered Bitcoin in the end of 2012. So it's been over 10 years now. But this is the reason everything that's been happening this last few weeks is the reason I am here and that I've spent the last decade of my life working on this new technology. The whole idea of being your own bank, there's a reason we all started this. And that's becoming super apparent to everybody. And I believe it's going to become even more apparent after the Fed rate decision today. Raising another quarter of a point is absolutely going to crush small and regional banks. And as you can see here towards the end of the trading day, banks like First Republic, Pacific West were just absolutely getting hammered. And I believe this is going to trigger the next wave of small and regional bank defaults. So, it's going to get interesting.
100%. And I actually was talking about it on my daily Zest show. That study found that 186 banks in almost basically 200 are vulnerable to Silicon Valley Bank-like collapses. So this is all just beginning, in my opinion. So I'm very much
absolutely.
With you. It's really scary.
Let's just go back to 2008 for a minute, right? To the exact week, I think Bear Stearns collapsed on March 16th of 2008. And we didn't have Lehman until September of that, in that fall. We still have 5 months to go here. There's a lot that can happen. And during Chair Powell's talk, he kept saying, well, we'll raise some more. We'll raise some more if we need to. And he flat out said no rate cuts in 2023 unless they're forced to. So, I absolutely think, unfortunately, it is going to get worse before it gets better. However, I think this is a good thing for crypto as people wake up to why all this stuff we call blockchain started in the first place.
Absolutely. I agree with you. This is just the beginning, and we have a lot to learn. I mean, the masses have a lot to learn. We're kind of ahead because we know about blockchain. We know about being our own bank. I mean, Satoshi, again, put this in the Genesis block of Bitcoin about the Chancellor's second bailout for banks in the British newspaper, The Times. So, this is Bitcoin's moment to shine, as well as other coins like DigiByte. But we're going to get to that in a little bit. I want to talk about you, Jared. You're a very interesting individual. I want to start off about let's say college Jared. What were you up to? What did you think you were going to do with your life?
That's a ways to go at this point. I can't believe it's been over a decade now. 15 years. At the time, I thought I was going to join the Army. I was in the Army. I was contracted to the U.S. Army, basically for 10 years to the Idaho National Guard. And at the time, I thought I was going to go off to flight school and be an Apache attack helicopter pilot. And that's where I was going into my junior year in college, which just happened to be the fall of 2008.
Ooh, that's spicy.
And that fall, 2008, I just graduated from the Army Leaders Training Course at Fort Knox, Kentucky that summer. Did very well. I was told by my ROTC cadre that if I wanted a chance of flying after I got commissioned as a second lieutenant, that I had to get eye surgery first because I didn't have eye surgery that would allow me to pass the flight exam.
Wow.
And they told me if I didn't get it, I'd have to wait till I made captain in order to branch aviation. Because a lot of times people don't know that there's kind of multiple armies within the Army. And within the officer corps, there's 16 officer branches. And when you go into your junior and then your senior year in ROTC, they take all the officer candidates from West Point, from ROTC and OCS, and they rank you like 1 through, it's about 2,000 people a year, and they rank you 1 to 2,000, and they have you pick which branch you wanted to pick. And so my number 1 branch was aviation because I wanted to go fly Apache helicopters or attack helicopters. And then number 2 was infantry. And I put armor all the way at the bottom because the last thing I ever wanted to do was be in a tank. But anyway, because the financial crisis happened and the economy started collapsing, I went and had eye surgery. I had a new experimental procedure called custom wavefront PRK. They make like a topographical map of your eyeball, and they basically come in and they do surgery on it, right? Well, anyway, it went well. I had perfect vision. But the military said, well, we're not sure about this. You've got to get a waiver. And because the state just cut the budget, you're going to have to come back in 2 years. We're dropping your contract.
Whoa.
And I'm like, what?
You got rugged.
Yeah, I got rugged by the U.S. Army in 2008 in the fall. And I was like, wait, why is the economy failing? What's going on here? And come to find out, that's what led me down the journey to start really researching the Federal Reserve, banking, understanding why is this crisis happening. I think when I left college that fall in November, I put out over 200 job applications and I didn't get a single response.
Wow, that's a lot of jobs.
Yeah, so, I found myself all of a sudden just kind of, hey, I got to do something. I started building websites for people. Didn't get paid a bunch of times. But that put me on the crash course to, why did the banking system fall apart? Why did we have this crash? Because my life did a complete 180 and got flipped upside down. And, in hindsight, that was for the best. And that led me down the path, like I said, that I eventually discovered Bitcoin. And then here I am, 15 years later or more. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a wild story. Especially you thought you were going to fly planes in the Army, and then you just get dropped. You just had an experimental eye surgery. Thank gosh it worked. So what was it like? Like you were really deep into the Army, and I know that must be very mentally, I guess, consuming because it's just constant training and being focused on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I signed up originally in 2006, my freshman year in college. And, my goal had always been to go to the academy, the Air Force Academy or West Point. I ended up going there for a short time for personal reasons. I ended up resigning my appointment at West Point and went back to Army ROTC. But, long story short, I expected that I was going to, serve. That's kind of what I'd always wanted to do and planned on doing and getting the experience and then, eventually going out on my own. But, yeah, it was everything got turned upside down. And, I really didn't have anybody to go to for advice or to understand what was happening. And like you said, I got rugged and it was a huge eye opener, to what's happening, in the world. So.
Yeah, that's definitely something. You had a plan and it was just taken from you. And then they say 2 years until you could resume that plan. I mean, that must have been hard to hear. And then you're out into the world. What did you do? Like, did you get another job? Were you still trying to do something in aviation? What were you trying to do then?
Well, I actually took what savings I had and I went to civilian helicopter school.
That's so cool.
Yeah, no, and I started flying helicopters, was doing well, and then because the economy was seizing up, I kind of got rugged again.
No,
because all of a sudden the threshold for getting a job as a pilot, went from having a few hundred hours of experience to a few thousand. Because what was the first thing all these companies and corporations did? Well, yeah, they probably don't need a helicopter to fly the CEO around. They could probably just use a limo, right? And that happened. And as the economy just contracted, just all these helicopter jobs dried up. And, there I found myself again, as nobody was hiring, people were going bankrupt left and right, losing their homes. It was just kind of a double whammy. So I actually, I worked several different jobs, kind of whatever I could. Worked part-time at a hardware store. I was a personal trainer, and I started building websites for businesses. And several of these businesses that I built websites for never even ended up paying me, and they went under and went bankrupt. So it was a huge eye-opening experience, and it was a rough time, and it was an experience I don't ever want to go through again. But like I said, it led me to start researching finance, the Federal Reserve, and trying to figure out why why all this happened. And I was always good with computers. My mom was a computer scientist.
Wow.
So she taught me how to code when I think I was like 8 or 9. And by the time I was a teenager, I was rewriting video game source code and building programs and applications and websites. So by the time I got to college, my computer science professor actually told me to go major in something else and that I would be wasting my time as a computer science major. She's like, you're well advanced. Why not go get some other knowledge and expertise? And at the time, I actually got hired my freshman year to be the computer ResNet IT guy for the college.
That's so funny.
So yeah. Anyway, that's kind of a long story, but yeah, that pretty well set me on the path of where I am today. I think it was in 2012. That's when I was building some website. I had some questions, and basically, on this forum, some guy had a question, another guy gave an answer, and he's like, "Oh, thanks, man. How can I repay you?" And the guy said, "Haha, pay me in Bitcoin." And I was like, "What's Bitcoin?" And that was the moment where I first discovered Bitcoin and went down the rabbit hole.
Whoa. I can't believe your mom was a computer scientist extremely early, too. And like,
Oh, she was. She was actually the same year as Michael Dell, Bill Gates, and all those guys in that first year of computer science programs at universities across the country.
an icon of a woman. And
Oh
she
yeah,
taught
no,
that all
she's
to
an amazing
you.
mother. Amazing mother.
Whoa, shout out to Mrs. Tate. That's amazing. That you must be proud of, like your mom being able to like be a computer scientist so early, because still there's not a lot of women in tech, and for her to be that early, teach you, and then you just advanced through tech. Let me ask you, because you were like doing gaming stuff and rewriting gaming code. What did you like think about how games were being built? Did you see anything that needed improvement that ended up being panned out, or are you still interested in gaming in general? Because a lot of people are building games in Web3 now.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had more fascination with going into a game and reverse engineering it and understanding how it all came to work together than I actually did playing it. And
That's
I
so
would
cool.
take variables and twist them and modify them, and make the spaceship go like 10 times faster than it's supposed to, stuff like that. And that experience over several years, I think, really helped me when I because a lot of video games are written in C++. So when I finally stumbled across Bitcoin, I just started reverse engineering it and going through it and really kind of trying to figure out how it was working. And that eventually led to, the creation of DigiByte to try and make improvements to the core Bitcoin protocol.
That's so dope. Okay, so 2012, you're finding out about Bitcoin. When you were first researching it, obviously you're a tech guy. Was that the first thing you looked at was the code, or were you more into like, what is this magic internet money and why is it here?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the time, Bernie Madoff had just gone to prison or was
Mm.
in the process of going to prison, and all the news articles. So a lot of people at the time, they're like, oh, Bitcoin, that's like the digital Bernie Madoff scheme. And at first, I took that serious. I was like, but then I actually went through the code and I'm like, well, wait a minute. This is, and back then GitHub really wasn't a thing. It was actually SourceForge. So you actually had to go download the code, and you had to hold on just a second.
Okay.
Dad, I'm on a live stream with people. The internet's watching.
You're all good.
Sorry.
You're talking about GitHub and how it was like you had to download a client or something like that for GitHub?
Yeah. So just side note, my parents, they live like a mile away from me and they stop by unannounced all the time. And this is what happens.
I assume so. It's okay. Tell Mr. Tate we
Yeah.
said hello.
Anyway, it's frustrating, but
it's okay.
yeah. So back then, SourceForge, was you basically a website like kind of like GitHub before GitHub. Still exists, but that's where you distribute code and binaries. And back then, the Bitcoin devs were on a mailing list and an IRC chat, so it was a little different than today. But I started going through it, and I'm like, wait, no, these are real people. But back then, everyone was kind of anonymous, and it was the cypherpunk kind of movement. Like stick it to the banks, kind of like we want our own freedom and independence, and that's really what, what kind of kicked it all off. So.
Whoa. And like you were happy about like that kind of movement of decentralization, being your own bank, especially because that was the time where it was like around right a few years before was 2008. You got your career rugged twice and you were starting to learn about money. So this had to kind of tie into your research.
Yeah. No, I really was. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It was a really rough period in 2008, 2009, and 2010. Being a young, what was I, 20, 22, 21, 22, nobody was hiring. And even to this day, there's analysts that show that my age group, I'm 35 going on 36, a year above and year below, that whole generation has kind of been stunted because of the 2008 financial crisis, because we were juniors, seniors in college coming into a world where nobody was hiring. And, there's a good 5-year gap there. And, in my case, I was like, well, why are these crooked bankers able to get away with all these crimes and do what they did while, everybody I know my age is having a lot of financial hardship and, I feel like it's kind of been set back, because when I graduated from high school in 2006, it was the peak prosperity for the United States probably ever at that point. And the attitude and the environment was, oh, we're going to go off and do great things. We're all going to be successful and make lots of money and everything's going to be grand. And, we're all going to, but, by 2008, 2009, 3 years later, it was a very, very harsh reality check, for a lot of people. And unfortunately, I think we're on the verge of that again, except this time I think it's going to be a lot worse.
Yeah, I think 2008 was like a prerequisite, like a little preview, like a little trailer before the movie starts,
Yeah.
Like a little bit.
And I think it's very important, like right now, people go back and study everything that unfolded and happened in 2008, because there's a lot of eerie similarities. But, in 2008, we weren't on the verge of potential World War III, and, the crisis wasn't really global, although it did go global. There's just a lot of things happening. But on the flip side, we all have been working for 10 years to help create a solution to give people another option during this crisis. And unfortunately, I think that option is now posing a very real threat to the powers that be. And that's why you just saw the first 3 banks to fail just happened to be the biggest crypto banks. So, as the gateway between the fiat system and the crypto world.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of what they're going to try to do is cut off our fiat on-ramps and off-ramps. And it reminds me of Mt. Gox when that went down, because that was really one of the only on-ramps and off-ramps for crypto. Well, when it really rugged, or when it really went away.
See, a lot of people don't know that
it was
that
like a
Mt.
glitch
Gox
or something.
Rugged people like 4 times before it finally went down. So I stopped trading on it after the second time, which was almost a year before it went down, because I actually lost half of my Bitcoin with their shenanigans. And it came out later. They had that thing, what was it called? The Wiley bot. Well, it would execute orders. So I think the run up, it ran up to $266 and then it flash crashed down to 90. And I tried to sell it at like 220 and then buy back again, but it reversed the order. And instead it sold at 90 and then bought back up. Yeah, That's
messed up.
It was really messed up. And that was my first red flag. And I stopped using it after that. I think that was March of 2013, because it didn't fail till that fall. But yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. But that does remind me of that time. Like Mt. Gox was one of the only fiat on ramps and off ramps at that time. People thought crypto was dead. They're like, Bitcoin is dead. But then Coinbase came out and Binance and then all these other exchanges and swaps came out and local Bitcoins was always a thing as well. So I think that's really like, I think local Bitcoins also left us too soon because I think we're going to need peer to peer and OTC ways to buy Bitcoin soon, considering that our fiat on ramps and off ramps are kind of getting clipped on us right now.
Yeah, no, and I think that's going to continue. It's going to be a continued escalating attack. And I really think decentralized exchanges are going to become extremely important. Already are, but they're going to be very much more important. But yeah, I do expect the fiat on ramps and off ramps are going to get tightened even harder now.
Really, it's annoying, but I think it's going to change because crypto is inevitable. We all know this is inevitable, and obviously you knew crypto was inevitable because you continue to go down that rabbit hole of Bitcoin and crypto, and then DigiByte. How did that even begin? Why even why even try to be a founder of a coin? Why do you think it was worth it to really get involved in the space at that capacity?
Well, I just absolutely knew that this technology was going to change the world. And I also saw that there were some, ways that Bitcoin could be improved, and mainly the speed, decentralization of mining power. I started mining Bitcoin with my desktop gaming PC in the fall of 2012.
Oh my god!
And at the time, I was just with a couple graphics cards getting like a half a Bitcoin a day. But by the time the first ASICs hit in February or March of 2013, all of a sudden it went from, mining a half a Bitcoin a day to, I calculated it would take me about 6,000 days to mine a single Bitcoin. That's how fast, in literally 1 week. It just, when the first ASICs hit, the first batch of, I think it was Avalon Chinese made ASICs, it just went exponential.
Wow.
And I was like, well, this isn't going to work. There's so much for everybody, with a desktop computer and a couple of graphics cards mining this. And that's really kind of what set me in motion of like, maybe there's a better way to do this. And I started researching. There were some other attempts. Litecoin had started with a different mining algorithm. There was a few others back then. I think the only projects that still exist that were around back then are basically Litecoin, Dogecoin, and I don't want to mention the other one.
Gotcha. No worries. No worries. I'm a big fan of proof of work. So I'm very happy that, DigiByte is proof of work. Why did you decide to do proof of work? Why didn't you try to diverge from that and, maybe go proof of stake or create your own consensus algorithm?
Well, I mean, creating your own consensus algorithm is very difficult. And to be honest, pretty much all the consensus algorithms out there were some sort of combination or modification of existing ones, right? But, proof of work to me just made the most sense. And it seemed the most cryptographically sound. And I still believe it is. And proof of stake, at the time, the first groups that were doing proof of stake, it just seemed like a great way for insiders to keep enriching themselves, right? And a lot of the first proof of stakes, were 100% pre-mined or pre-issued, and I'm like, well, this is completely pointless. This defeats the point of having. Why are we, working so hard to create a decentralized environment where one group at the top controls it all? Like that's what we're trying to get away from. And to this day, that still blows my mind. How so many projects are so deceitful and people can't see it, but that's just where it is. But I think people are going to continue to wake up as this crisis unfolds.
Yeah, I do think I agree with you. I think proof of work is better for sound money in terms of the system being more evening out that playing field. Because again, like proof of stake, there's pros and cons to everything. But the fact that the bigger share that you have, the more kind of control that you have over the blockchain, that's scary. And I think like with Ethereum, what scared me was like, with a lot of them are OFAC compliant. Maybe one day they'll be able to reverse transactions or change things. And that's something I never want to happen. So I'm happy that proof of work and DigiByte is still really going strong. And DigiByte has, again, been around for 9 years, you said. That's a long time. A lot of projects have gone up and down. You've seen Solana came out to 2020, has gone down multiple times since then. But a lot of people went to it anyway. I think a lot of people are looking for that stability now. And I think DigiByte is one of those things that are stable and really reliable. Especially, I don't know if you want to touch on how it's mined and like there's 5 different algorithms that you use. And if you want to go into that, because I think that's a really interesting fact that not a lot of people know about.
Yeah, well, I mean, to start off with, DigiByte's had 100% uptime over 9 years.
Woo!
Which is, absolutely amazing, but as expected. The next biggest thing that I think really differentiates DigiByte from pretty much every other project out there, with maybe the exception of Bitcoin, is there was never a mass pre-mine. There was never I as the sole founder, literally at this point in time, I have less than 1% of 1% of all the DigiByte. I really don't have that much. So there's not some person or group or entity or company or whatever sitting on top that controls it, that could dump on everybody and manipulate it at will. Like, it's just not the case. It's truly decentralized. And everybody that we have working on it, helping, is pretty much a volunteer. There's, we're on tons of platforms. I don't even know how many exchanges we're on anymore. But there's a lot of really amazing people that have come together to form an awesome grassroots community that are the people and the power behind DigiByte. And that's something that has grown organically and has gotten very strong. And, the reality is, at this point in time, there is no company group to go under. So it's kind of hard. If something happened to me, I get hit by a bus tomorrow, nothing really changes,
Let's hope that doesn't happen.
Well, I don't want it to, but that's the cool part. And that, to me, I think was the most important from the beginning. And so the reason you see so many of these projects come and go is greed, right? You have these insiders that try to pre-mine themselves millions or billions of dollars. And some have successfully pulled it off. And then what happens is they take that money and they go spam and pay a bunch of influencers and ads and hype it up. And, that's why people really have to ask when they go look at a project, who controls this? Who has the controlling interest? Who's the majority? Who's calling the shots? And, if you go to CoinMarketCap and you look at the top 200, the reality is 98% of them, those projects are controlled by a handful of insiders, right?
Yeah.
So the thing that really makes DigiByte different is basically being truly decentralized since day one. We've put ourselves in a very strong position, and being forward looking, we've had a lot of significant technological advances that have helped make DigiByte a very efficient, secure, and fast UTXO proof of work blockchain. So right now, DigiByte has 5 independent mining algorithms. The idea is, if you try to control all the mining power of one algorithm, you only get 20% of the blocks. And so that kind of prevents the issue like we've seen with Bitcoin, where there's this heavy centralization of hardware manufacturers and mining. And then on the other side, the DigiByte blockchain has 15-second blocks. So we're actually 40 times faster than Bitcoin. So for every 1 block that Bitcoin processes in 10 minutes, we have 40. But we have the same amount of transaction capacity, so we actually can handle 40 times the transaction volume. So, one of the things that never made sense to me is, I'm like, well, why can't Bitcoin be faster? Because for any of you who've known or ever tried to send a Bitcoin transaction, if you go to pay for something like coffee and you have to wait an hour for 6 confirmations, that's just not really going to work. But for larger stores of value and longer term, yeah, it works fine. But, there are limitations to how much you can do. And then there's been all these improvements, like the Lightning Network and layer 2 approaches. But the reality is, with DigiByte, we don't need that. So that's some of the same things. That doesn't mean we haven't had our challenges. We've changed algorithms a few times, and we very may well do that in the future. But our goal is to keep DigiByte as decentralized as possible, and to keep chugging along and to make a very secure, robust layer 1 protocol that anybody can build on. And there's been a lot of innovative use cases that we've pioneered. One of those is DigiID. Yes. Your private keys in a wallet are much more useful than just simply storing, sending, and signing and receiving crypto, you can use that to authenticate the lock on your front door, or the authentication to your email, or any service, right? That's one of the big issues is people have easily compromised passwords. Well, why are we still using passwords? Why don't we use cryptographic authentication on a decentralized blockchain? It's pretty amazing stuff. We've got our own layer 2, something we call DigiAssets, where you can issue NFTs. And we were actually, I think about the time you discovered DigiByte, that's, I think, when we were just kind of rolling that out.
Yeah, I remember when it came out. I think DigiByte was cool. Go on.
And that was before the NFT craze, even.
Yeah.
I think in a way, and that's kind of one of the things we've done is we've helped kicked off some of these movements and changes. It's just, by the time it moves so far along, you get all these new flashy marketing projects that kind of drowned us out. But, we're here, we're chugging along, we're not going anywhere. Like I said, if you go through the top 200 projects, I think there's only maybe 3 or 4 that have been around longer than us that are still here in existence. So we're literally one of a handful of projects that has stood the test of time, which in crypto years is ancient at this point. But that doesn't mean we're any less reliable or capable.
No, 100%. And this is probably one of the fastest cryptocurrencies I've ever used, probably the fastest. I've used Lightning Network and it's fast, but I think in terms of like a layer 1, and I believe I think a lot of people are going to use Bitcoin as money for a little while, maybe as an intro. But I believe farther down the line, and I think it might take a little bit, but I do believe that a lot of people are just going to want to save their Bitcoin, and there's only 21 million Bitcoin. I believe there's going to be a Bitcoin shortage. What we've seen is proof of reserves has to be an issue in this space because a lot of people don't have reserves. Exchanges may not have the supply of Bitcoin. Even the banks don't have their supply of fiat, right? So nothing is guaranteed. And there's going to be a run for Bitcoin. I really do believe that. And I think other people are going to want to spend something. They're going to want to be able to use something that's feasible, that's fast. Like you said, if you're going to a coffee shop, you're getting a coffee, a chocolate croissant, you're not going to sit there with Bitcoin for 20 minutes for a confirmation for a $6 purchase. No way. You're going to want something like DigiByte that's right there, and then you use it and you leave. You move on with your day. I 100% agree with you. And I think that's what's needed for mainstream adoption is something like this, in complete honesty. I think DigiByte underrated.
Well, I completely agree with you there. DigiByte is hard capped as well. They're only going to be 21 billion in roughly 21 years. There's a 1% monthly reduction. That's the original target. But you're right. And one of the things that I've come to realize after 10, 11 years in this space is, hard capped, truly decentralized assets like Bitcoin, like DigiByte, are very effective at a storage of value and providing a secure network and backbone to do a lot of very innovative and cool things. And that's something that you just don't have the ability to do. The whole idea of having a trustless, independent, truly decentralized, neutral third party that can help with whether it's security authentication or being an arbitrator for some sort of smart contract. That to me is the real value of the Bitcoin network and the DigiByte network long term, because that's something you cannot get from any centralized entity on this planet. And a lot of people are like, oh, there's nothing backing crypto. I'm like, well, actually there is. There's the most advanced mathematics and cryptography that we know in the universe. The summation of human knowledge and expertise. It's math. It's backed by the basic universal laws of mathematics in the universe. And that to me is the most powerful force there is out there that you can tap into. And so that's my rebuttal when people say, oh, it's not backed by anything.
Oh, such an eye roll, Jared. Such an eye roll, because that's what the White House was saying yesterday. The president's economic press release or whatever it was called yesterday, they put out saying crypto has no fundamental value. Meanwhile, they said within the text, they said sovereign money is money issued by an independent country, and that money is valued and liable by the central bank, and it's valued by the central bank. So how is that, to me, how is that value? Like you're relying on a central bank. Like that doesn't make sense to me. How is that value when again you have Bitcoin, you have DigiByte, finite supplies, proof of work, and just like you said, code. It's a universal language. Is math.
If they say it has no value, then why are they still taxing us on it?
Right? Hypocrisy. Hypocrisy, Jared.
The easiest rebuttal ever. But don't get me started on the White House. I'm not going to dive into politics and all that. But the hypocrisy is over the top, right?
It is.
And the reality is crypto, especially when banks start failing, is the biggest threat to the powers that be in the establishment. And I have been saying this for years now, and I truly believe this. Just like FDR banned the private ownership of gold and silver, which a lot of people don't know. What was it from 1933, I think was the year. What is it? Executive Order 6802 or 6502. From 1933 until 1970, was it 71 or 72? For 40 years, 39 years, it was illegal for a U.S. citizen to own private gold and silver in your home.
That's pretty wild to me.
Right. So I'm like, people, the U.S. government banned the private ownership of gold and silver in the last Great Depression. Why would they not do the same with crypto? And I believe that day is coming. There will be a day where the government will try and outlaw the private ownership of cryptocurrencies, decentralized cryptocurrencies. And they're probably going to do it before they try and roll out their own central bank digital currency.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone can look this up. I think it was 6802.
I mean, it's very. I think it's so funny that you bring up that they didn't want you to hold gold. Meanwhile, if you go on the TV and the markets channels, they have commercials about gold and how you should buy their gold because it's the only true currency. Quote. That's literally what they say in the commercial. Gold is the only true currency. Which, if I have gold, like, how am I gonna shred a piece off and give it to my bodega guy for a bacon, egg, and cheese? Like, that's just it's just not gonna happen.
No, that's my argument. I tell people, and it was Executive Order 6102, April 5th, 1933,
Alpha,
forbidding the hoarding and ownership of gold certificates. Yeah.
That's
and that
crazy.
wasn't in place until 1970. I think it was 71 or 72 when Nixon took us off the gold standard effectively. So if you think about that, for 40 years in the United States of America, it was illegal to own gold and silver at your house. You could be arrested for it, right? Why would they not do the same for crypto, especially as banks start failing? And I mean, to me, it's just common sense that they're going to try it. I don't think they're going to be successful, but I still think they're going to try it. But yeah, going back to your point, I've often told people, and look, I'm a believer in gold and silver long-term too, especially in times like this. Physical, not, paper derivative stuff on the market.
Yeah, that's fake to me.
But my issue is, I have went to go sell some silver and some coins. It's a pain in the butt. First of all, they have to go verify that it's real. So they put it through all these tests. They got the ice test, the melt test, the little device. They got to go coin by coin. Then they try and negotiate, and they want to pay you, and it's just it's a hassle. And if you have a bunch of it, it's a little difficult to move in very large quantities. But yeah, the problem comes, if we come to the point where we have to buy and sell with gold and silver, most people have no idea what's real, what's not. Nor to mention, how do I go to the grocery store, with a gold coin and just kind of gauge how much it's very difficult. And this is why we did go off the gold standard at one point, but doesn't mean it's not a useful tool. I look at crypto as part of the bigger picture, part of the pie, right? Mm-hmm. Diversification. You have some crypto, you have some precious metals, you have some land, and then some income producing businesses or assets, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And that's something I've always said. I would never advise anybody to go out there and mortgage their house to go buy crypto. That's a bad idea. And, and the volatility in the markets, I still think we have another crash coming, but then again, I'm not the best at predicting these cycles, but after being through 5 of them, the volatility I don't think is going to go away. But I do believe we have one last big hockey stick moment where a mass majority of people finally start understanding the value of a truly decentralized cryptocurrency, where no government or nation state on earth can interfere and interject the monetary policy. I mean, to get me started today, sitting there listening to Chairman Powell speak, I realized, I'm like, the whole world is on hold for the words of one man, and trillions of dollars of assets are moving up and down in insane volatility, wiping people out on both sides, long and short, because of a single word that, this guy says. I mean, to me, it's just kind of, if you step back and you look at it from, 10,000 feet or 20,000 feet, you imagine that you were a super advanced extraterrestrial alien race coming to visit Earth. They would probably say that's insane.
Yeah.
That, I mean, it's crazy that this is how our system functions. And what's even crazier, what I really find amazing right now is, because of everything that's happening, we are getting back to the roots of why Bitcoin was created, where it came from, and where this whole movement started. And I think there's a lot of people that have come into crypto over the last 4, 5, 6 years that didn't really understand that. But I think that's becoming and will become much more apparent. And, as long as the power still stays on, which that's the one reason for having physical gold and silver, is because if the power goes out, crypto is kind of worthless. But as long as the power stays on, there really isn't much out there that you can truly own yourself and control yourself. And that's crypto. I mean, if you own stocks and you use a brokerage, you don't own those stocks. If you look in the fine print on the legal agreements, you're basically renting them from the broker and the clearinghouse, right? The whole system's rigged in that regard. And if it goes under, they can take them, right? If you got money in the bank, they've legalized basically bail-ins, and that's something a lot of people don't realize. So they could take it that way. If you don't pay the taxes on your house or a real estate investment, then the local government can come and seize it, right? So this whole ownership of the idea of true ownership, where you really own something, is kind of a farce in the United States of America in 2023. Same thing with your car. You don't pay the taxes on it or the registration. They can impound it and seize it and give you a ticket when they pull you over, right?
Yeah.
So really in this day and age, and the only thing you could truly own is, you can own some precious metals, but you got to go bury it in the backyard. And if you ever have to get out of Dodge real quick and you've got a bunch of it, well, it's going to be a pain, with a bunch of super heavy suitcases running around. Whereas with crypto, you could literally take a few $1 million, store it in a seed phrase and a brain phase, and walk across the border butt naked and then recover it on the other side, right? What else can you do that with?
Yeah.
So it's extremely valuable and remarkable technology.
I agree with you 100%. I say that all the time. Nothing is guaranteed. Like, everything is the flip of a switch too, if you notice. Like the FAA, right? The flights went down and they were like, oh, it's a technical difficulty. It reminds me of the same technical difficulty. I don't know if you remember February 2021, the whole interbanking system went down, in which it was like a flip of a switch. They say it was a technical difficulty. If you were wiring money, because that's what I get from people. Oh, I don't need crypto. I could just wire money from my bank. But that day you could not. So what do you do if they just flip the switch and you don't have an opportunity? And again, every single other thing can be taken from you. But as long as you have those private keys, they could take your ledger from you, but they can't do anything with it if they don't have your password, if they don't have your private keys. So everything is in those keys. And I think that's the most important thing. Self-custody, being your own bank. We left the TradFi system. We left the banks because we don't want a custodian. Why did a lot of people go, like your point, go to crypto and then use something like FTX and use them as a bank when we left the banks for independence? And I think, again, that was reiterated a lot over the past year, even with the Celsiuses, all these Chapter 11s, and now the banks going down. It was crazy watching the news. Oh, crypto's terrible, Chapter 11 this, and now the banks are basically doing the same thing. So it's ironic in that way as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're spot on. And to me, the real amazing part about blockchain technology and decentralized distributed networks is Money is just the first use case and example. The reality is anywhere you have an unnecessary third party that's almost there like a parasitic entity just sucking unnecessary utility from the system. Why do you need all these third parties and all these different business transactions? Well, at one point you could argue they were a necessity, to help facilitate trade. But nowadays, like if you go to buy a house, why do you have to go get, multiple title companies, multiple real estate agents, multiple people who extract their fees from the system, right? And this is how most commerce still happens is you'll have, when it comes to payments, bank payments, if you're a merchant and somebody comes in with a card and pays with a debit or credit card, you've got like 5 different intermediaries that are collecting fees off that transaction. Why? Right? And as an investor in some small businesses, I see how much they're paying per month in credit card fees and debit card fees, and it's just insane, right? And a lot of people don't know that as the end user. But how does that affect you as the end user? Well, that's why the prices go up. Right? There's a 5-10% markup on top of it just because of the inefficiencies in the banking system. But yeah, I mean, the real cool part is not only can you store your private keys, but eventually I believe you're going to be able to store the most important things in your life that are, important to you personally, whether it's the deed to your house, whether it's your will, whether it's photos of your, grandparents or children or whatever that you can pass on. There's going to be in a lot of amazing technology that eventually comes out of blockchain technology. And most importantly, as artificial intelligence continues to emerge, I mean, I'm truly amazed at what's happening with some of these image generators, video generators, in, Chat GPT-4. I've been playing around with it. It's pretty mind blowing what it can do. Well, what's going to happen when somebody tries to target, for instance, you and uses AI to make a video of you promoting something that you never promoted, right?
Oh my gosh.
It's already basically possible. Well, how do you as a content creator verify the authenticity of the content that you're putting out there? Or let's say somebody doesn't like you or me and frames me and creates images of me doing something illegal that I didn't do. How do you verify the authenticity of AI generated content? Well, blockchain technology is the answer, in my opinion, on how we can basically differentiate between actual reality and real world videos, images. Like if you and I were on this video site and before we did this video, if we authenticated each other's public keys, and then we publicly displayed that so anybody can verify that, well, they could say, hey, these people were real. That's Jared's known public key. And, they had a real conversation. That wasn't fake. And then if the file is audited at any point or the video is edited, well, then it wouldn't match. And you could say, no, I don't trust that because it's been altered.
That's true, because what's happening now is that there are actual YouTube channels that take my interviews like we're doing right now and will try to cut me out of the video and take parts of the interview and like have some AI like narrating part of it. It's actually pretty wild. So that's already happening where people can authenticate. Like people were sending me, oh, isn't this our video from your channel? Like, no, this is someone that stole our interview. It's pretty wild. So that's already happening. And I was going to say like DigiByte, like DigiID, I think it's going to play a huge part. Thank you, Ozzy, for gifting 10 memberships. I appreciate that. I think DigiID could be huge. Like, it could be your Apple ID almost. Because if you really think about it, Apple extracts all of our data. They track every single thing we do. Even during the pandemic, they were trying to track who we came in contact with if you came close to another iPhone, which I think is also insane. So your Apple ID is being used for everything. Now imagine if we took that to something like DigiID, where you have your apps under it and all that stuff. You authenticate yourself. I think that's something that's going to be needed a lot in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I truly believe that you should be in charge and custody of your own data, privacy information, and identity. You should not offload your digital identity to some third party. And digital identity is becoming even more important than ever before. And it will be the most important thing you have in your life. And if you cede control of your digital identity to other third-party companies and corporations that can start shutting you down when they don't like something you said, especially shutting your phone, it's coming, and it's already happening in China, right?
Yeah.
So, this is something we really have to be aware of. We really have to be, standing up against, because if we don't, it's going to happen fast. And that's why truly decentralized blockchain networks are the only way to fight back against this centralized overreach and authoritarian, digital dictatorship. And that's something that is really the core crux of what we're trying to do that I don't think a lot of people understand.
Yeah, they're going to have to start understanding it really soon, because a lot of people are like waiting outside their banks to get their money out. And then the China CBDC, they track your SIM card too, and then your money expires. So it's like, even if you call the wrong person or say the wrong thing on the phone, you could get clipped. And that's scary. You need to be self-sovereign. You need to be in control of your funds, because when it comes down to it, money is power, and whoever has the money has the power. And clearly the governments do, the central banks do at this point, because I don't know if you even saw, there were other central banks giving liquidity to the US dollar, and people are trying to take your digital identity. I don't know if you've heard of account abstraction, Jared, with Ethereum and what that's doing. If I were you, I would look into account abstraction and tell me what you think about it at a later date. Basically giving your Ethereum wallet, connecting it to something like Visa, and they do like automatic transactions for you, and they keep your private keys in case you lose them. You can still recover your account. That's scary. You never want to give up your private keys. You never want anyone to do your stuff for you but you. So I think what you are doing at DigiByte is really important. And I cannot wait to see what ID turns into in the future, because like I said, I think it could be a substitute for Apple IDs and a lot of these websites and even email that just suck up all your data and basically sell you to all of these companies and foreign entities as well. Like, you don't even know where your data goes.
Well, that's so important. I mean, we should own our data. Why should all these companies basically be selling us and pimping us out, without our permission? And that's something blockchain technology can really fix is, hey, if you're going to send me spam and marketing emails, because my email, I can't tell you how many spam emails I get a day, because you sign up for one service, that service sells it to another service, sells it to another service. And the next thing you know, you're getting hundreds, thousands of these unwanted spam emails that you never signed up for. Well, blockchain technology could fix that. Hey, if you want to send me an email, well, you got to pay me 10 cents at least, right? Stuff like that. I think there was already an attempt to do that. Yeah. And a lot of times these kind of use cases and concepts have been thought up and prototypes have been built with blockchain technology over the last 5-6 years. I know I've done some, but they never caught on because people really didn't understand the reason why. And I think that's changing and will continue to change as the necessity becomes even more apparent to a lot of people.
I agree 100%. This is a revolution, and revolutions aren't easy. And I really do think, again, like DigiByte's going to be talked about a lot, if not enough. It's not talked about enough now. And I think in a few years, especially, like Digi's going to have its time, even less than that, because again, I think there's going to be a Bitcoin shortage. I think people are going to be running for Bitcoin, and then they're going to want to hodl that, and they're going to want something that's easy to spend, that's convenient, and has a larger supply, and that's DigiByte. So again, I'm really excited. And when I think about Gen Z, and we want instant gratification. We're not waiting for all this Bitcoin stuff. No way. And I love Bitcoin. It's my biggest bag. But I want something that's convenient, easy to use, and I think that's DigiByte. And I really can't wait for what the future holds for you guys. I want to ask you, since you're a country guy, what's your favorite thing to eat in the South, because and in the country? Because I know you guys like have better food, better barbecue. What's your favorite thing to eat?
Well, on my mom's side of the family, which is the Texas side, it's definitely brisket.
Nice.
Texas style brisket. It's like an 18-hour process, but it's amazing when you get it just right and it's moist. But being from Idaho originally, literally being raised, kind of down below the mountains, but next to a couple potato fields. A steak with a baked potato is probably my, go-to hearty meal if I ever had to choose one. But
that's beautiful, Jared.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
What brought you into crypto? initially?
Yeah, long story short, so my dad was into Bitcoin 2016, and he told me about it. I was 13. I ignored him for a while. I thought he was a little cuckoo, and I just didn't think I could do anything with Bitcoin. All I heard was like numbers, finance. Then when I was 16 in 2019, we did our first Bitcoin transaction. I saw how easy it was to use. All you have to do is scan a QR code, copy and paste an address, and that's it. You could instantly send money to anyone, anywhere in the world. And then I saw that if I go to the store, all I have to do is scan a QR code, or they scan my phone. And that's it. I could leave without having to do a whole fiat interaction, because I'm not carrying around loose change out here. I know like there are kids that literally throw their pennies in the garbage because you can't do anything with them. So I fell down the rabbit hole. By the time I was 17, it was April 2020, lockdown, sad times, hated it. And I just wanted to be a part of something cool. I wanted to be a part of crypto, be a part of the community. So I just created the Miss Teen Crypto handle. So I was available on all platforms, took it, started tweeting. And I was tweeting about Bitcoin, Litecoin, and DigiByte. And if you look up DigiByte on the GIF section on Twitter, you'll find like a video of me and a few GIFs of me over there that was created. So shout out to the Digi community for that. But yeah, I really fell down the rabbit hole. And then by November 2020, I was like minting NFTs, asking strangers about Bitcoin. But I felt that this was a revolution. And I saw that a lot of my friends didn't know about Bitcoin. And I felt as though we're digitally native, Gen Z. Why are we behind the revolution instead of spearheading the revolution? So that's why I'm here.
Well, that's the exact point that I was kind of getting at. It's amazing how fast it happened. I think I was only 24 when I discovered Bitcoin. Time flies.
Yeah.
But, at that point in time, there was a ton of younger people that we'd all just been screwed over by the financial crisis, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think there were so many people in their early 20s and even teens back then, 10 years ago that got into crypto. And now most of us are, in our 30s or 40s, right? Or approaching our 40s. But when I look or I go talk to, younger people, like I've got a couple of nephews and a niece that I think one of them just turned 17, 18. The other one just turned 19. The other one's 21 now.
Oh, wow.
They could care less about crypto, right? And it seems to me, my interactions are like, yeah, none of our friends really care about it. And then what you just said, I would have thought, since you guys are the first digitally native, everything you've known is smartphones and smart, like I still remember using a dial-up phone and having to call a landline to call the girl I was going to pick up on a date's parents to ask her if I could be there on time, right? Like I caught the tail end of that before cell phones. But to me, I've just kind of been blown. Like, what can we do, I guess, to tap into the younger Gen Z generation? And that's why I love what you're doing.
I think
I'm just curious, like, what do you see that the missing component is there?
accessibility. If you're under 18, you can't get on an exchange. And a lot of people don't know about Bitcoin ATMs. And I think more adoption needs to be brought about with Bitcoin ATMs, which, when I was under 18, in New York, they're illegal. So I remember seeing a coin flip ATM in Jersey at a meetup, and I used it and I was like, this is so easy. It's so convenient. You just put in your fiat, it scans your phone, it sends your Bitcoin to you. So I was like, well, wow, more people need to know about this. But unless you know about it, and if you're under 18, like you're really at a loss there. So I think it's the accessibility point. And the KYC is an issue too, because a lot of kids don't have a license or they don't have valid ID yet. So that's another thing that I ran into. Thank God I had like a crypto savvy parent, and my dad would just give me the Bitcoin. I would give him cash. He would just buy it on Coinbase and send it to me. Especially in New York, we only have Coinbase, Gemini, but I think again it's all in due time. When I was in high school, it was like my senior, junior years when I started this, and a lot of kids were talking about Elon Musk and Doge, and I think that brought a lot of adoption, like the meme, and then people started comparing. Okay, what's Doge? What's Bitcoin? Ethereum? Different things. How do they compare? So I think that brought a lot of adoption. Even like the past few weeks, I've been getting texts from kids from high school that didn't even speak to me in high school. They were like, "Yeah, Randy, I know you're like in this crypto stuff. Do you want to hear this info, or how do you get Bitcoin now?" So it's happening, and even I'm going back. Yeah, I'm going back to my former high school again next week to teach some Bitcoin classes as well. So
Oh,
It's
very
all
cool.
turning
Very
around.
cool.
The interest is really there. I think it's just the accessibility factor. And I think, wallets are getting prettier. I think a lot of things need to be more simple. When I first got in, the wallets weren't that cute. Like, it wasn't that simple. Things are a lot more simple now, but I think it still needs development. And even I think one of the things I was talking about on the Digi space was the KYC. I think it was something with Digi Asset X or something like that I thought was a little bit of a barrier, but I think it will be taken down, honestly, in the future. Because I think a lot more open source things are going to come out, more like DEXs are going to come out, more people are going to build on DigiByte as well. So I think less KYC for underage kids and just easier ways to get in. Not saying that we're trying to avoid something, but just accessibility. Let us in. Let us in. Let us build,
Yeah, no, I hear you. And to be honest, it's been my frustration for years. Even going back to like 2014, 2015, when we had a fully functional exchange we were going to launch in the US. We were going to call it DigiTrade X. And it worked, had everything, and just the regulations, it was just way too prohibitive and overbearing. And that's been the sad case for several of the prototypes and projects that we've started over the years.
Yeah.
They just get absolutely hammered and drowned out by the cost, and not just the cost, but nobody would give us an answer. It was just regulatory purgatory where nobody would tell us yes or no. They're like, well, we don't know yet. We need
It's
to
still
think
the
about
same
this.
thing now.
It's still this. Yeah, no,
It's
a
still the
decade
same
later.
thing.
Well, we have advanced because in 2014, 2015, 2016, they were trying to shut it down. Like, they were going after crypto people. It's a whole 9 yards. There's a whole nother interview worth of conversations to be had on that era. But then we moved into this era, and yeah, you're right. For almost 8 years now, it doesn't feel like we've made any progress on the regulatory front.
Yeah, because even like OpenSea, right? They're one of the biggest marketplaces, and they're trying to go for an IPO. They're looked under a microscope. Meanwhile, you had something like Blur that's decentralized, came out of like freaking nowhere and released a token, and people were flocking there. There's just so many things that people are trying to get away with it, go around it. People are trying to be compliant, but they're not really getting anywhere. So it's like you have to like tread this really weird line nowadays. But I think the IRS came out like today or yesterday and said they're taxing NFTs as collectible. So I don't know if that would help like the digi asset side of things, and maybe like help like more people like want to like do more NFT transactions in general. So I don't know. And I would love to see more like, NFT marketplaces on DigiByte and like gaming. I think that would be awesome. And I know it's already in the process, but I think that's something as well that I would love to see from DigiByte.
Yeah, no, I would love to see a lot of things.
Yeah. One
We've
day,
had
I
a lot of
believe.
ideas over the years, but like I said, there's been several of them that have just been squashed by the regulatory environment. And me as an American citizen, there's a lot of things I've chose not to do that I could have done because I didn't want to deal with the hassle and the legal costs and the potential liability. So it is frustrating because the United States is pushing innovation overseas and has pushed control and ceded control in leadership in blockchain technology to out of the country. I'll just leave it on that.
Yeah, it comes down to like dollar dominance. And again, that's like a whole other podcast, but I agree. And I think DigiByte is like just getting started. I know it's over 9 years old. It's like forever years in crypto. It's like an eternity, but I really do think so many people are going to be building on it soon. Cause again, it's feasible. Even like during the bull market, you compare, like Ethereum. That's why Solana really popped off because Ethereum was really expensive to use. Buy a $10 NFT, it's like $100 plus because of gas fees. There were gas wars. That's why I see people building on DigiByte more in the future, especially on the NFT side. DigiID, I think, is going to be huge one day. I'm just very excited about it all. I'm all for self-sovereignty, owning your data, and just, really, again, owning your value, I think is the most important thing, and having assets that nobody can take from you. Like my high school diploma, that should have been something like that should have been an NFT, something to actually prove I graduated high school versus a piece of paper, or you actually have to go to the school and ask them if I'm their alumni or not. It's just crazy stuff. But I believe in the future of crypto, 100%, and the future of Digi. So Thank you for coming on here today and just really breaking it all down, the history of DigiByte. And, I think the 5 algorithm subject that we were talking about before is really important, protecting Digi against that 51% attack, because that's what people are concerned about, with how is the blockchain sustainable, or is there protection against, just outside, interference. And I think that's really great as well. So thank you for everything you have taught us today. And thank you everyone in the chat for joining us. Jared, where can everyone find you? What's the best place to learn about DigiByte? And give us a message from your heart. It could be about steak and potatoes. It could be about Texas, aviation, blockchain, whatever your heart desires. Put it out there for us, Jared.
Well, first and foremost, you can go to digibyte.org and start learning, about it. The best place to follow me, I'm most active on Twitter now that I've been reinstated, thanks to Elon.
Woo.
The one thing I would tell people about DigiByte, it's not just me. There's an amazing community that's literally formed from a grassroots movement that have a lot of the same common values. We may not always agree on everything, which is, that's how anybody is. But the fact that we're all working towards a common goal of a truly decentralized network is really amazing. And I would say, if you have sent a Bitcoin transaction and you've never tried a DigiByte transaction, please go try sending a DigiByte transaction and seeing for yourself. And then the only other thing I would say is, after 9 years now with zero downtime and continuous improvements and upgrades, we're not going anywhere. We've stood the test of time, and we will continue to test the time. And that's something that basically 99% of projects out there can't say. But I'm not a person who says that DigiByte should be the only and the end all be all. No, I think there should be numerous blockchains, and the more diversity and attempts. To me, decentralization is a spectrum. Mm-hmm. On one side, you have the completely 100% centralized, pre-mined, pre-issued, what I call scam coins, because I really think it's deceitful. And then on the other side, you got, DigiByte and Bitcoin in the world. And then there's a whole range in the middle. And I'm not saying that some of the ones in the middle, or even more towards this end, don't have their utility and use cases, because they do. But decentralization is a spectrum, and you really got to ask yourself, which side of the spectrum do I want to be on? Do I want to be on the truly decentralized future for humanity, or do I want to lean on this centralized decentralization where you have CBDCs that get rolled out that are allowed to control more aspects of your life? And it really is coming down to this, and we have a choice. Blockchain technology can be used to free us and enlighten us and help humanity go to the stars, or it can be used to further enslave us and control us in worse ways than Orwell ever foresaw in 1984. But the choice is ours right now, but we don't have long to pick a side.
No, we don't. It's coming quick, Jared. It's scary.
So that's, I guess, the enlightened statement I would end with.
No, I love it. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you. You're such a vibe, Jared. And I hope to do this again one time and just talk about, I feel like we talked about so much, but not a lot at the same time. I feel like we just could talk for hours, Jared. So thank you again for joining me. Thank you everyone in the chat. Please make sure, if you enjoyed the show, to smash these likes, subscribe, share the stream out with friends so more people can learn about the history of DigiByte and Jared Tate and his wild story. I'm really happy that you're here, Jared. I'm happy DigiByte's here. I'm so bullish on the future of DigiByte and all the creations and technologies and things that it's going to be used for. So thank you again, Jared. I appreciate you. Shout out to the DigiByte Foundation as well. You guys work really hard. They're always in spaces. So shout out to DigiByte Foundation as well, decentralization and whatnot. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate all of you guys. Make sure, again, you smash these likes, share the stream out with friends. I'll be back 12 p.m. Eastern tomorrow for the Daily Zest. Have a great day. And as always, stay zesty. Peace.